Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, how you doing, bro?
Very good, mate. Very good indeed. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. We're just off the back of watching Champions League, which we were just speaking about briefly off air. And I'm not going to lie, Dan. The quality of the football that we're going to see Thursday night is probably going to be more like Championship, if I'm being totally honest. But we're here. We're going to preview this game. I think it's going to be a completely different tie to what it was a couple of weeks ago, thanks to the appointment of Jesse Marsh. But before we get into that, we have a message from today's video sponsors. Dan, have you ever wanted an app that collates all the scores and news from your favourite teams in the whole of Europe, Dan? Have you ever wanted that?
It's a constant need of mine, mate, because there's always news. That's the thing, is that we love this game. We love the industry of football because it's ever changing, mate, and you need a place to keep up with it all.
And we have that place exactly for
We
you
sure do,
guys.
mate.
It's One Football. Guys, this app is genuinely, it's life-changing.
It's great because I actually I use it. So it's great because it's where I pull the stats from for the podcast. So it's like there's all that new stuff as well, but you can track all of the players' stats from like across Europe for all the different leagues for continental football as well. It's a dream. It's a dream, and the best part, mate, is it's free.
It's free, and guys, it would help support the channel massively if you check that One Football using the link in the description down below. We promise you guys won't be disappointed. So, guys, if you haven't checked out One Football, make sure you do so by using the top link in the description. They help us out more than you guys could ever imagine. They're helping us produce these. They're the reason the previews are back. One Football, and the reason we changed the format as well, because you guys prefer the conversation rather than us riding solo. But Dan, Leeds, it's my least favourite away game. It's a horrible ground. There's been a lot on the line every single time in the past 2 or 3 years against these guys, whether it's been fighting for promotion or looking to maintain a win record, or after being humiliated at home. There always feels like there's something on the line here. And after what was probably an entertaining game for the neutrals, the 3-3 a couple of weeks back, which was almost the beginning of the end for Marcelo Bielsa. Now Jesse Marsh will be taking Leeds United out at Ellen Road for the first time against Villa on Thursday. This is a really interesting one, mate, because ultimately, I don't expect many of our listeners to know Bundesliga or Austrian football or even MLS, to be perfectly honest. So if you haven't heard of Jesse Marsh before this, that's totally fine. That's why me and Dan are here. I think he had a tough time at Leipzig. He had a really tough time, but ultimately he failed, didn't he, Dan? Because Leipzig were a top four side, fairly established, and when he left, was fired, should I say, they were languishing in 11th in the Bundesliga. The first thing I think everybody will want to know, what can we expect from a Jesse Marsh team, Dan? Dynamic, all action, high pressing, a lot of energy in that final third. And on the surface, it sounds quite similar to Marcelo Bielsa, but it's not the perfect swap by any means, is it, mate?
No, it's. I think it's a very if you look at how. I think the only problem I have with this appointment is the timing, in that I don't really. They're two managers cut from. You're right, the same cloth. They're not identical. There are stylistic differences, but they are. You can see why Leeds have chosen to go with a manager at this point in the season where there's not a complete overhaul in style. The last thing you need at this point in the season, where it's real crunch time for Leeds, is to try and adopt a completely new way of playing when you've been so ingrained in playing the Marcelo Bielsa way for so many years. It's not going to be a complete change. There are a few differences, particularly in the way that they press and in the way that they defend. Bielsa took a very unique approach to defending, where it was like man to man all over the pitch. It's not really something you see anywhere else. And the thing is like it works against the whole principle of the Marcelo Bielsa system is that you creates more chances than the opposition. You attack and you defend in such a way so that you will create more goal scoring opportunities than the opposition, therefore winning the game. Which is why you see Leeds get blown into these all action encounters where it's end to end. It's very transition based, as we saw perfectly demonstrated at Villa Park just a few weeks ago.
Absolutely.
And so Jesse Marsch, as I said, it's not a complete change. It will give Leeds a bit more of a midfield, which is something which I think the fans have been quite disgruntled about with in the last few weeks about of that Marcelo Bielsa reign, in that the midfield was just like a sieve, basically. There will be a bit more structure to it. Jesse Marsch's teams prefer you to build up in wide areas where Bielsa's tended to funnel you down the middle. And I think technically he'll get more out of the technical players than Bielsa did. So I think the likes of Rodrigo, for example, who didn't really ever fit in under Bielsa, he was brought in, never really felt like he nailed down a spot in the side where really he should have. I think those kind of players are going to favour Jesse Marsch, because he's someone that, does have a good record for bringing players through you. And you have to look at like a Sterling, Brau Haaland, for example, who's someone that flourished under Jesse Marsch at Salzburg. So there are differences, but it's his first home game, mate, and it's a new era for Leeds, and it's going to be an emotional one at Ellen Road, and I think that's probably the biggest obstacle we're going to have to overcome.
Absolutely, I think the structure. I don't know if you, Dan, or if anybody listening or watching caught the Leeds Leicester game. If you haven't, I've got some visual aids for you guys here, as you will be able to see, but Dan can't, which is something I think we need to work on. But you'll see this in the future, Dan, so you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Leeds are in the blue, Leicester are in the red. And as you guys can see here, Leeds are defending a lot deeper than they would usually. And as Dan alluded to there about having a much more compact midfield, you can see the likes of Klich, who's 43, and I think it's Dallas, who's number 5, who is a sort of makeshift midfielder / defender, are sort of camped on the halfway line and protecting the back four in a way that we never really saw under Bielsa, because you can't create chances if your midfielder is stood in front of the defence protecting him. That's just the Marcelo Bielsa way. And so this is, of course, Marsch's first game. Now, if we look at the Tottenham game, which was, of course, Bielsa's last, this time Leeds in orange, there's about 7 men camped on the halfway line, but you can see the difference already in how much deeper that Marsch is setting Leeds up. They need to be harder to beat, and again, something that isn't really it can't really be shown in the average positions is how they press. Because as you alluded to earlier, Dan, it was man for Bielsa, but Marsch seems to have got the players pressing into space rather than players, which is an important difference. And I think it could be something where Villa do get a bit unstuck here, because for the past 2 games, I think we've known exactly how our opposition are going to play, and we were able to set up in that sort of 4-4-2 diamond, fullbacks a lot deeper, pack the midfield, and really make Villa a lot more solid in the defensive phase, because we knew that Brighton like to have the ball out wide, and you can't expose the fullbacks there. I don't really know how Villa are going to set up in this game, Dan, and shocking, I know, because we're previewing this game. I think it presents an interesting challenge to Gerrard and the coaching staff, because pressing, I think when an opposition presses space effectively, and you only have to look at Manchester City because they do it as well. They don't press men; they press space. It causes teams to second guess themselves, because, of course, they have patterns of play that they work on, and although 40,000 Villa fans gruntle every single time Emi Martinez makes that pass from a goal kick to Tyrone Mings, and it goes to Dean, and it goes to whoever, these set plays, as soon as the space is being pressurised, where because without a shadow of a doubt, Rafinha will be the likes of Rafinha, James, Harrison will be pressurising that space to no end, as we saw a few weeks back. It does kind of cause some doubts, and I don't think we're the most press-proof side. I think we have a few players. I think Buendia is press resistant. I think Esri is when he's on the ball as well, whether he'll come in or not, that's another question. But it's going to be interesting to see how Villa cope with the pressure here as well. Being the away side, are we going to take the game to Leeds down, or are we gonna let them have the lion's share of possession, like we did against Brighton, or even Southampton? I'm not really too sure, mate.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we can't do is fall into the trap that we fell into against Newcastle away from home. Two clubs in very similar situations, battling relegation, new manager bounce, all that sort of stuff. And we allowed St James's Park to grow, and it became a very difficult atmosphere to play in. I think we have to do a better job of nullifying that game early doors. We do have you know what, mate? First time I've said this on a preview in a long time. We do have a very decent record against Leeds, especially at Ellen Road. We've only lost one of our last 9 Premier League visits to Ellen Road, which, as I said, not often I say that on a preview. Normally it's very doom and gloom in terms of the head-to-heads. So that's something to be positive about. And I think we need to use that because, as I said, against Newcastle, we did allow the crowd to grow into it and everything like that. And this is Leeds didn't play too badly in that defeat to Leicester. There were a few pundits saying afterwards that classic cliche, if they play like that until the end of the season, they won't go down. You hear that a lot.
Yeah.
We're not, as you said, I think you're right, mate. I don't think we are the most press resistant side. I think Coutinho needs to. The only thing that's keeping Coutinho maybe an A grade overall instead of an A plus is that he hasn't really done it in an away game for us yet. In all of
Yeah.
the Houghton games, he's been absolutely stellar, but that form hasn't quite transferred to away performances as of yet. Where he hasn't played badly. It's just when you see every time he's played at Villa Park, it's been utterly remarkable. He hasn't quite hit those heights on the road yet. So that's something that especially coming off a game like he did the other day, that's what you'd like to see from him. And I think he can help a lot with that. He can help you in so many of those tricky situations. He is by far the most press resistant player in this Aston Villa squad. So if he does need to come perhaps a little bit deeper, just to facilitate and help link things up, then perhaps that's one way to get around it. So see a ground that will be very emotional on the day. And I think that's probably Villa's biggest barrier. Obviously, there's the unknown quantity in Jesse Marsh as well. So this is going to be a very tricky fixture, mate. But to be honest with you, I thought that of Southampton. And I actually text you the day of the game saying, "Oh, mate, got a bad feeling about this. Don't like how this one is going." And we won 4-0. So maybe that same feeling means that we're going to get a similar result, mate.
Absolutely. And if Villa can get a nice little run, that if a result here would mean 3 wins on the spin, which would be absolutely massive. Obviously, currently on 33 points. But team news, Dan, they're expecting the likes of Patrick Bamford to be in the squad at the very least, and Calvin Phillips as well, someone who's pushing for a start. A man that for the longest time has been linked with Villa. Will he, won't he? It's an interesting one because I remember after the whole situation kicked off in the Championship and stuff, I swear I saw a video. Guys, let me know if you saw it in the comments, and Dan, you too. There's a video going about of Calvin Phillips saying "fuck Villa," all this kind of stuff. I think it's towards the end of the season, or maybe it was the following season when they were celebrating getting promoted or something like that. There's definitely a video where he was saying "fuck Villa" and he was calling Grealish a load of names under the sun. I know I've seen this. Which makes his friendship with Grealish even funnier now, because obviously, since they went to England, they've actually become good mates. But yeah, I swear am I like making this up, Dan? Have you seen this?
It's one of those where you're saying it and bells are ringing. Maybe what is it? Is it the Mandela effect? What's that thing where
Yeah,
you imagine? Yeah, maybe it's one of those. So yeah, I think the comments are gonna have to be a savior on that
I
one.
hope so. I hope so. Either way, I think I'd welcome him regardless if he said "fuck Villa." But he's ultimately, if Calvin Phillips was fit, I think Marcelo Bielsa's still in the job, and I don't think Jesse Marsh could ask for a better player to be coming back, especially in this game. It's not only the work he does off on the ball, but off the ball as well. The positions he occupies. he's so valuable to Leeds. So far this season, 37 tackles, he's won 27 of them. About a third of his pressures, he manages to successfully dispossess his opponents. It's a joke, man, and especially when you consider where this guy was at before Bielsa came in. Leeds were looking to let him go, and Bielsa's transformed into a magnificent player. And he's one that I certainly hope doesn't play come Thursday night, mate, because I think it would make that midfield battle certainly a lot tougher than I think we're hoping it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that's probably Bielsa's biggest credit, in that this Leeds team has for a very long time felt like, to use that famous cliche, more than a sum of its parts. When every time you play Leeds, you look at that team on paper and you're almost quite impressed by that. Bielsa got this to the Premier League and punched well above their weight, really, especially last season. And this is the problem for Jesse Marsch now, is that where Bielsa managed to create a team that was far greater than the individual talents on the pitch, Jesse Marsch is now just left with those individual talents. In that, he is. I saw today, he's like, he's looking at bringing Adam Forshaw back into the team and stuff like that. And you're looking at those kind of players and you think, right, okay, now you're outside of a Bielsa system. Just how does Adam Forshaw, just how does Luke Ayling, just how do these guys do outside of the Premier League? Patrick Bamford is obviously, he scored more goals against Villa than any other team. In fact, no, I think he's only scored more against Wigan. But I mean, with that in mind, I think my earlier statement probably rings true, because I don't think he'll be playing against Wigan anytime soon. So it's one of those where, yeah, I mean, I do think Leeds will probably stay up. I think there is still enough of that togetherness and that team spirit. And I think with the guys that they've coming back from injuries, they will be okay. But it's not a team littered with quality. It's something that Bielsa really managed to get the most out of. And that's a big old obstacle facing Jesse Marsch now. And that's why I do question making the change at this point in time. Because if you're going for someone who's very similar to Bielsa, that won't have the same emotion surrounding it, that won't have the same support, the Leeds fans, it's still very raw, the sacking. You've got these players coming back, which Bielsa made into the players that they are. Are you not best just sticking until the end of the season, then making that switch? That's all I've thought, is that, okay, you've gone for a Marcelo Bielsa regen, someone that's not experienced in the English game, someone that's, unfortunately, he mentioned himself, someone that's American. That's another obstacle for him to overcome. It's like, it just seemed a bit weird to me that you'd make a switch for a very similar coach, which faces, for me, more challenges than just sticking with the original one. But as I said, mate, we'll see exactly what he's made of on Thursday.
Absolutely. And another player just to highlight before we kind of wrap this up, Dan, Ilham Elie. Wow, what a goalkeeper. It's a joke how good this guy is at 22. Leeds have conceded a lot of goals. They're conceding on average 2.26 goals per 90. And they've conceded 61 goals throughout the entire season, which is crazy. That is not an indictment on how good this guy is. He's got a save percentage of 64.1, which is mad when you consider. I think he's faced near 160 shots on target so far this season, which is absolutely mad. To have a save percentage that high, really good player. Wasn't at it obviously when we played them a few weeks back. I'm trying to cast my mind back to the goals. I don't think any of them were particularly brilliant, and I certainly don't remember leaving Villa Park feeling Melier had a game that he'd be proud of. But watching Leeds, he's the guy, man. He's so talented, and I think if they go down, there's going to be a number of clubs that are looking at this guy because as I say, he's still young, 22, born in 2000. So he's younger than us, Dan.
I hate every time that comes up, man. I hate it.
That's how you know we're getting old. And we're not even old. We're like 22, 23. And we're sat here talking about people born in 2000. Oh,
Shocking.
Mate. That's how you know we're in the wrong business. That's how you know we're in the wrong
100%.
business. But no, I mean, he's a fantastic goalkeeper, Dan. And hopefully he's in a vein of form similar to what he was when we last played them at Villa Park, mate.
Yeah, it's one of those where no side, if I'm correct in saying, I don't think any side this season has conceded more goals than Leeds. In Bielsa's last, I think they conceded like 20 goals in the last 3 games of his reign or something like that. So and we have, as I said, we have had some luck at Ellen Road. It's been a pretty happy hunting ground in the Premier League for the Villa, and I think we've come into. It's really nice to see that Ings and Watkins partnership is starting to blossom because that is so important going into this game. It's genuinely like if we were going to start with that partnership and it wasn't working, I think you can almost write off this game because you need those guys. As I said, when you're having to play for a press, sometimes that outball to your strikers and having them be able to hold the ball up and bring each other into play and use that link up play to alleviate pressure can be so important. And if it wasn't working, I would honestly almost say this game looks completely different. But because it is, it really favours Villa, I think. And I think if those lads can continue that and we play this diamond that enables us to win those sort of inevitably scrappy and quite intense midfield battles, then I don't think this game is out of reach for Villa at all. I really don't. I think it's going to pose very difficult test. As I said, that there's more than just the game at play here with it being Marsh's first one at Ellen Road. So yeah, if we can overcome those barriers and play like we did against Southampton, there's no reason why we can't get points, mate.
Absolutely. So, guys, we would love to know your thoughts on this. It's certainly going to be a nervy one. We'd love to know some score predictions. I'm not going to ask Dan, I'm going to ask you guys in the comments to get involved and let us know how you guys think this game's going to go. If you're not subscribed, make sure you do so. It'd be really nice if we could hit 6K before the end of the season. I know that is a ridiculous goal, given the sort of stunting growth at the moment. But there's plenty of you guys who are watching that aren't subscribed, so make sure you subscribe. Hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button so you never miss a video from us here at Heart of the Holte. And yeah, like the video if you enjoyed. Up the Villa.